When you're biking, you guys know I like biking, right? You ever said that once or twice? I mentioned it since I got here, maybe a couple of times. Well, when you're biking, you'd be surprised the amount of stuff that happens. Sometimes you're out there minding your own business, and what used to happen in Tularosa quite a bit was the diesels, not the trucks. I mean the diesels, the 18-wheelers. Okay, say that right? They would literally swerve at you when you're biking. That was not fun. The first couple times really get you. That after you've been doing it a couple months, you kind of just, okay, they're going to do this, and you just kind of keep going. Well, sometimes when you're biking, there's a lot of people who are just kind of jerks and they're swerving at you. But then there's this small minority who is nice to you. Like they'll go out of their way, to work around you. They'll move over, nothing like that. They won't honk at you, nothing like that. Well, for the grand majority of people, especially the people that are jerks when you're biking, they don't really mean to be jerks, okay? But it's just, have you noticed it's easy for people to miss bikers? I mean, even motorcycles, which have loud engines on it, you just don't even pay attention sometimes. You're just driving, and you just don't even think twice. A lot of accidents happen that way. People just not paying attention. It's hard to see them. I mean, okay, realistically, how many of you in the past 2 months have been driving and somebody is walking on the side of the road? Maybe it's nighttime, maybe it's not, who knows, and you could barely see them. Maybe they're wearing dark clothes, for instance. In the last 2 months, has that happened to anybody here? Okay, so a couple hands there. Just 2 weeks ago, I was driving on Berindo, and here's some crazy person in really dark clothes in middle of the night just walking out there like, hey, let's see if I live past today. I mean, and that's pedestrians. Sometimes I won't even see cars. Well, so on my bike, you think I'm joking. I don't want to mention what my insurance rates are. No, I'm just kidding. But on my bike, I actually have these special lights that are flashers, because research shows that motorcycles that have their lights on during the day, they're 25% less likely to get in an accident. Likewise, bikes who have daytime lights on, 20 to 25% less likely to have accidents. So why am I saying this? Well, because as we're continuing in the book of Philippians, Paul calls us and encourages us that we are to shine like, that was supposed to be like this, like stars. That we are to shine like stars. And I just wanted to give that as a little contrast here. When you're driving and you don't even see the bike that's there because they didn't have lights, versus how much easier it is to see them. Or at night when somebody's walking and they don't have a flashlight, they're just wearing dark clothes, it's so much harder to see. You see, when you go outside right now and look up in the sky, and you're not going to see any stars because it's middle of the day. You might see the moon maybe. Well, at nighttime, you see the stars really easily. That's because they shine. And that's what Paul calls us to do, just like a biker is easier to see when they have flashing lights on. So today we're going to be in Philippians chapter 2, verse 12, and we're going to start 12 through 13, which we looked at 2 weeks ago, just to kind of refresh what we're talking about, since last week we were looking at 2 Timothy. But then we're going to continue on with 13, 14, 15, and 16, which is the verses we're actually looking at today. So if you'll please stand for the reading of the word. I hope you remember all that, because there will be a quiz. Therefore, my dear friends, just as you have always obeyed, so now, not only in my presence, but even more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who is working in you both to will and to work according to his good purpose. Do everything without grumbling and arguing, so that you may be blameless and pure, children of God, who are faultless in a crooked and perverted generation. This is the part, among whom you shine like stars in the world, by holding firm to the word of life. Lord, we thank you for your word. We thank you for your encouragement, for your spirit that goes with us. Lord, I just pray that you bless everyone who's here. Lord, that you'd be with them, that you provide for them, that you'd comfort them. Lord, that you would draw them near to you, and that you just show them new things that they haven't seen before. As they're reading the Bible, that you just open their eyes, help them see things that they've never seen. As they worship you, Lord, just open their heart and help them to experience you, and that it would be a comfort to them and a guidance to them. I just pray that you give them ears to hear whatever you'd have them to hear today. And Lord, I pray that you touch my mouth. Let it be your mouth, Lord, that I would say the things that you would have me to say. And God, put a guard over my mouth, that I wouldn't say things that are me, but Lord, I'd say things that are you. Lord, let me be made less and you be made more. We love you, Lord. Amen. You may be seated. So just to kind of recap what we looked at 2 weeks ago, I'll paraphrase verses 12 to 13 because sometimes we lose a lot of that. So let me just make it simple. Actually, I should have looked at my notes. I'm not going to do that yet. I will in a minute. But before we get there, something that's important to consider is as you're reading through the book of Philippians, you might be thinking, okay, I get that this is a church in conflict, that they're having struggles with really loving one another. Okay, I get that. But why doesn't Paul just practice a little bit of church discipline, right? Just call the person into his office, and, I'm joking, he didn't really have an office, but call the person into his office and, just set them straight. Why didn't he just do that? Is Paul simply ignoring church discipline? Well, I don't think so at all. I think what has happened is it has escalated so much that it's no longer, I need to ask this person to stop making everything a big deal. It's moved past that. Now it is he has to appeal to them as a church because there's a lot of people are separating themselves into cliques now. They're starting to, be at war, us versus them. Well, who was right? Was Danny the one that was right, or was it Connie? Everybody's taking sides. And because of that, it's kind of escalated too much. And so Paul is writing this letter to this church, trying to get them to be united again, trying to get them to love one another. But as he's going, notice that he does not take sides. He does not take sides. He doesn't say, I know you've heard a lot of things, and you're right, this person really was wrong. Or he doesn't say, well, it was actually this person. He doesn't. He completely, beside the point. Instead, he says, look, I'm not taking your sides. We're going to instead be on Christ's side. And the whole letter, he's trying to get them to act like Jesus. The whole time. What do you do when you're in these situations where you're not getting along? Act like Jesus would. So now that we've kind of answered that question, which is a looming thing, and remember, Paul, as we go throughout the letter, keep your eyes open. You're going to see little reprimands, not reprimands, but mild, we'll just call them mild corrections, are all throughout the book, but not really in the way that you would maybe think of if you read Matthew 18, for instance. So going back to this, 2 weeks ago we were in verses 12 to 13, and this is my paraphrase. This is not what is in your Bible, okay? So I don't want you going and say, what translation was that? That was not a translation. I'm just trying to make it easier. Because you are God's and he is working in you, live like you're saved. He's working in you, okay? You are God's, you belong to him, so that's the whole fear and trembling bit, okay? So then live like you're saved because you know he's doing a work in you. So you could even make it simpler than that. Maybe this is a TLDR. Let me give you the shortened version here. You're saved, so act like it. He didn't say it in so few words, but that's the same idea that he's trying to get across in those verses. So now we can get to verse 14. A very interesting verse that I feel like whenever I'm reading Philippians, I sometimes just kind of blow past this verse, but it is actually important. Do everything without grumbling and arguing. Do everything without grumbling. So you know what I do when I read a verse like that is I think, okay, so when I'm at church preaching, I need to not grumble. It's very hard to preach and grumble at the same time. It's very difficult to do it. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just very difficult to do it. Rather, I don't think he's saying while you are doing your ministry, because that's not what he said. He's not talking about people in ministry. He's not talking to pastors. He's talking to the church as a whole. Rather, what he says is do everything without grumbling and arguing. Everything that you're doing, whatever it is. And did you notice how we sometimes go to we're going to be on one side or the other, right? Some of us are going to be more prone to grumble. This is where we're talking to ourselves, right? And then others of us are going to be more prone to the and arguing bit from the end of the verse there, where we might not be, grumbling, and sometimes grumbling involves other people, but we'll get other people involved and start arguing and, and when we read verses like this, it's important to remember that he's talking about real people in real life. I've noticed in my time in the church, I've been in ministry a while, and one thing you see is people think that passive-aggressive is different than overtly aggressive. You know what I mean? So they'll be passively aggressive, like they'll mumble under their breath or do something behind your back or, talk about, but they won't say anything to your face. They'll just, do this stuff behind your back. They'll have a problem with you, and they'll go and, all this different stuff. That passive aggression is still what he's talking about. It doesn't matter if you're being passively aggressive or actively aggressive. Do everything without grumbling and arguing. Don't get caught up in this kind of stuff. When you're implying things and then you get mad because you implied it and they didn't understand it, Let me just speak on behalf of all the men here. We don't get implications. We don't. Okay? If you are implying something hoping that we'll pick up on it, good luck. Good luck. It's not going to happen. You're going to get really mad. Our brains aren't wired like that. You could literally say, man, I sure wish that somebody put a trash bag in this trash can. Yep. Does not enter into our brain at all that you are implying that we should put the trash can in. We don't think like that, okay? So just real quick, if you're trying to imply something to get something done, it's just never going to work, whether it's in church or out of the church. And sometimes we do something called doublespeak. And none of these things are any different. But I just want to real quick break down what doublespeak is, because not all of us are taught. Just kidding, Todd, just kidding. Doublespeak is where you say something in intentionally vague words. For instance, they didn't die, they passed on. They're in a better place. That's doublespeak. They didn't really pass on, like they didn't like pass by, they're not really going by you. But it's a nice way of saying the thing. You're saying it in a way that's not actually saying it. Another way, if you work at a company and you're about to get fired, what do they say? We're downsizing. Translation, you're fired. It's doublespeak. Well, a lot of times in church, we do the same thing. I'm not gossiping. I'm discussing. We're not gossiping. I was just simply listening. Oh, that's the same thing. We're not fighting. We're disagreeing very, very loudly, and it's getting in the way of our friendship. I'm not worrying, I'm concerned. Have you ever heard that one? I'm not worrying, I'm concerned. Well, your concern is keeping you up at night. It's doublespeak. And so whether you, in your mind, are categorizing this like imaginary, like, oh, it's okay that I'm doing this because it's passive-aggressive, that's not what he's saying. Regardless of whether it's passive or active, do everything without grumbling and arguing. In your job, do your job without grumbling and arguing. Don't go home from your job that God blessed you with and grumble and argue. Don't unload on the kids. In your family, you don't want to, I think I'm just going to leave it there. You guys see what I'm saying. In your ministry, whether you're cleaning, whether you're doing chores, whatever you're doing, it's not as important that you do the thing as that you do it with a good attitude. You know what I mean? It's great if you want to volunteer for a ministry, but volunteer for ministry with a good attitude. You don't want everybody to be like, man, I sure wish this person wouldn't have volunteered. You know what I mean? If you've been in this situation, you do know what I mean. So don't grumble, or complain, would be alongside that, or argue, which would be fighting. Oh my goodness. What happens a lot of times is, and Sam Chan said this, a bad attitude is like bad breath. Everybody knows it except you. What happens is we focus so hard on teaching our kids how to do the right thing, right? Like be a hard worker, that we fail to show them how to be a light. You know what I mean? Sometimes we aren't a light to the people who we are around the most often. When is the last time you have intentionally tried to show Christ to your spouse and kids, grandkids? So it's different. It's easier to get caught up in the trying to teach them something and trying to teach them lessons or trying to provide for them or whatever. But it's a lot harder to try to be Christ to them. You want to be the best husband you can be? Show them Christ. You want to be the best father you can be? Show them Christ. You want to be the best wife you can be? Show them Christ. If you are working on that, boy, oh boy, that solves all the rest of it. But when we go home and we're ranting to other people or about other people, whatever, about our kids, our coworkers, our boss, or spouse, whether it's to ourselves or to others, it's producing the same result. Our attitude is made more negative, and it's really ruining our witness. When we read verses like this, it's important to remember what Paul is getting at here is that we, each of us, are a light, whether we realize it or not, to other people. We are showing them this is what it means to be a Christian. So if our light is dim, we are showing a dim Christ. If our light is bright, we are showing a bright Christ. Now that takes us to verse 15, where he says, well, I'll read the end of 14, the end of 14 with verse 15. Do everything without grumbling and arguing, that's the 14 bit, so that you may be blameless and pure. Do you know what that means? That means that they weren't blameless and pure. He's saying, do this so that you may be blameless and pure. Don't grumble. Don't argue. Why? So that you may be blameless and pure. Okay. So follow-up question. Does that mean grumbling and arguing, those are the only things that keep us from being blameless? No, of course not. Rather, that is what they need to do. Now, you also might need to do this. I don't know. I don't live in your shoes. I don't live in your house. However, it might be something else. Whatever that thing is that is keeping you from being pure and blameless. So he says this here, so that you may be blameless and pure, children of God who are faultless in a crooked and perverted generation. Now we get to a very interesting point he's trying to make. That we are not like the culture. We're not supposed to live like the culture. We're not supposed to solve our problems like the culture solves their problems. If you go anywhere, okay, how do people nowadays solve conflicts? They're toxic. Cut them out of your life. Don't have anything to do with your whoever. Your mom, your dad, your siblings, your kids, whoever. And I'm not saying there's never a reason for families to get cut off. I'm not saying that at all. However, I've noticed that nowadays it's much more common than it was before for people to cut people out of their lives without a good reason. Not to say that there are no good reasons, just it's a lot more prevalent for this kind of stuff to happen. But what we're called to do is be children of God who are faultless. That doesn't mean sinless. Keep that in mind, because it's impossible to be sinless, in a crooked and perverted generation. So you might say, what does he mean by that? Well, if we were to say it in our terms, it would be like this. In a crooked and perverted culture. That's basically what he's saying. That's the same idea there. Culture, generation, same thing. Either way, what he's getting at is they do things this way, but we cannot do things this way. We shine like stars by not doing what they do. That's how we shine like stars. If we're doing things the same way, if we're handling problems the same way, if we're not getting along like they aren't getting along, if we aren't living with hope like they are. And so this is what happens. People say, okay, so I have to fake it. Right? Because if I'm a light, that means I've got to fake it. I've got to always be a good light. We'll get to that in just a minute, but no. He says here, in the end of verse 15 and then going into 16, he says, among whom you shine like stars in the world by holding firm to the word of life. Okay, so let's kind of tie that together. How do you shine like stars? By holding firm to the word of life. Okay, so let's kind of weigh this a little bit. Does that mean that you shine like stars by being perfect all the time? Do you shine like stars by never messing up? Do you shine like stars by putting on a good show and always looking the part? You're always dressed nice. You always, have a smile on your face. Is that what makes you shine like stars? No. What makes you stars is holding firm to the word of life. Holding firm. Bad news just came on. You read the newspaper, something came on TV, bad news. What do? Hold firm the word of life. Oh, your family's having a huge conflict. Your family's falling apart. What do? Hold firm the word of life. That is how you shine like stars. When these things are happening, when your boss is not being fair to you, when you have a conflict with your coworkers, how do you shine like stars in these messy situations? By holding firm to the word of life. Now, okay, so what is the word of life? The word of life is the truth, the Christian life. You could say it's the gospel, it's Jesus. Whichever word helps you to understand that idea, okay, it's Jesus. So if you want to see it as the gospel, the Bible, Jesus, however you want to see it, that's what we're holding on to. And if you remember last week, we talked about saying in Timothy, where Paul was talking about these different people to Timothy, and he says, these people who are doing these things in the church, not in the world, because the world is already doing it, but he says in the last days, the people in the church will be doing this, and he says that they will have a form of godliness, but denying its power. A form of godliness, they'll look the part, but God isn't actually doing a work in them. They're denying its power. Well, that's kind of what we're talking about here. It's not putting on a show. It's allowing the power to change you, allowing the Holy Spirit to change you. So here's the thing. When Christians live like Christians, you could say that what these verses is getting at is that shows Christ, and it preaches. Do you want to preach to the world? It starts with how you live. Okay? If you are a Christian who's taking advantage of other people, ripping them off, lying, probably not a real great witness there. Now, obviously, once again, you don't have to be perfect to be a witness. That's not what we're getting at here. Not at all. But when Christians live like Christians, like they're actually supposed to, dependent on the Lord, not sinless, but dependent on the Lord, it preaches. And these are people a lot of times that would never have come to church, but they see you, and you bring the church to them. By infighting and not getting along, those kinds of things, acting like the church in Philippians is acting, we damage our witness. So let me give you 2 examples that I think get this point across. There was a girl who had a friend that she wanted her friend to come to church, and her friend would never come to church. Well, eventually her friend ended up going to church, and this was a person that she said, oh, this person will never go to church. Well, eventually, she did go to church. But she didn't go to church with that girl. She went to a different church that girl didn't go to. The reason why was because that girl was in a lot of conflicts. She was never getting along with people. She wasn't a real good witness. See, that girl, that friend, the friend of this girl, she still wanted to experience God. She still wanted to go to church. She just didn't want to get involved in her friend's politics and drama. See what I mean? She wanted to experience God, not the drama. A second example. There was a woman who wanted her son to go to church. She nagged him all the time. You really need to get into church. Nag. She prayed for him for years. Well, finally, he said this to her, and I am not making this up. This is a true story. She said, why would I want to go to church when there's just a whole bunch of people like you there? See, he did not want to go to church because his mom was a bit of a pill. She didn't get along with people. She was always in conflict with somebody. Well, surprise, surprise, he didn't want to go there. Why would I want to go there and have people talk about me behind my back? Like, why would I want that? See, do you know who, being the pastor, I care about a lot of things that's going on, and I kind of sometimes hyperfixate on those things. But do you know who doesn't care about church politics and church conflicts? The world. They don't care at all. See, to us, it's a big deal when somebody changes the bulletin or changes where they're sitting or changes the seats, from those old, what are they called, the uncomfortable ones, the wooden ones? Pews, yes. Pews into chairs. Church people care about that kind of stuff, but the world, they don't care. They absolutely don't care. If something is going to get them saved, it's not going to be the chairs. It's just not going to happen. What is going to get people saved is Jesus. And when the church shows Jesus instead of the politics, that definitely, absolutely shows. And what's happening now is, Satan's real slick. Satan's real slick. Because now we're getting our focus off of telling people about Jesus, and we're getting it into our head that we need to start converting people to our political views, like Democrat, Republican kind of stuff. That is absolutely a sidetrack. And what happens is you need to vote this way because I feel like this more aligns with Scripture. And you might be right. But the point being, we aren't trying to convert people to voting. We're trying to convert people to the cross. We're trying to tell them about Jesus. That's the thing that actually matters. See, so God's doing a work in us. This is what these verses are talking about. And I know that He is, and I hope that you know that He is, because He promised that He is. He said in those verses that He was working in us to will and to work. That means that is a promise from God that that's what He's doing. So our hope for the future is that Christ said that He was working in us. I'm not ready to go to that yet. We're going to be on this slide for a little bit longer. I've changed my mind. And especially nowadays, we live in a very polarized time, okay? You get on the news, you read the newspaper, depending on which ones you get, and it seems like there's this very common, popular splitting going on right now. There's 2 images that are held up to us. The first image is of the enlightened liberal. These are people who are shown in media, regardless of whether you agree with this or not, is not important, but they're shown in media to be people who care about human rights. They care about, the poor people. They care about people. They care about the planet. They're trying to take care of things that need to get taken care of. And then there's the image that we're shown of MAGA. It's not even Democrat versus Republican anymore. Now it's Democrat versus MAGA. And this image that they've held up of MAGA, regardless of whether you think it's true or not, is the image of one who only cares about profits. These are people who don't care about people. And it's just an absolute crazy thing that whenever you turn on the news, you can bank on them trying to find stories and find some way to twist it around to where whatever political leaning they go to is whichever one they're going to harp on. And here's the problem, is it's very easy to get caught up in that and think, yes, I have to pick a side, I have to prove my side right, and I have to prove the other side wrong. Well, the problem is that we're called to be the light of Christ, not the light of Democrats or Republicans. And that's very hard, I think, nowadays because it's become so divisive. Everything on the TV is about this. Everything on the news is about this. They're even making movies about this. I mean, look at how hard Disney has tried to, if you still watch Disney, I don't know if you do or not, but look how hard Disney has tried to, get their own little ideologies across in their movies. They aren't even enjoyable anymore. They're not even family anymore. They're just, hey, we have a political message we're trying to get across. So everywhere that you go, you're seeing this constantly around us. And Paul's call to us today is not become less important. It's actually become more important. Shine like stars in the midst of a perverted and crooked generation. And what we do is we look at our culture and we say, wow, this is a mess. Okay, there's all kinds of things that need to get fixed. And it's easy to get upset. I get it. Especially, I think, when you're older because you see how quickly things have declined, like insanely fast. But the call is still for us to shine like stars. And when you think about that, shine like stars, it's an interesting idea that I don't think we ruminate too much on. The earth produces no visible light. It produces ultraviolet light, but, I mean, who sees that, right? And that's just from the heat that it emits. But as far as light source, the earth is not a light source. It does not produce light. If you were to go out into outer space, the only light you would see is if reflected light from another source, such as the sun, or the lights that people have built at night, maybe, possibly that, like city lights and whatnot. But as a whole, Earth does not produce light. And you might say, okay, what's your point? Stars produce light because they are different. They're not Earth. The stars are burning chemicals, basically. That's what they are. Well, the earth isn't that. They are fundamentally different. And the reason why we can see stars is because earth is not a star. If earth was a star, we lived on this star, it'd be so bright you wouldn't be able to see the stars, right? Well, we live on earth, not on a star, and that's why we can. And you might say, okay, you're acting like we're toddlers. I know. I'm sorry. I'm blown away by this idea. And the idea is that we are called to be different. That's the idea that I'm getting at here. We shine like stars because the culture is evil and wicked and immoral. That's what makes us shine all the better. We're not the same. We're not of this world. See what I mean? That's my whole point that I'm trying to get at. We must be different. We're called to be different. We're called to shine like stars in the midst of an evil culture. Is the stuff on TV annoying and upsetting? Yes. In the newspaper? Yes. And when you go outside? Yes. That is an evil, perverted culture or a generation. Yes. We are called to shine like stars in the middle of it. So how do you shine like stars? Well, not by being fake, not by pretending, but if you remember 2 weeks ago, by working out your salvation with fear and trembling. Let it come out. Well, and I hear this from people all the time. I don't think that I'm a very good witness. I don't feel like I'm a very good Christian. There's good Christians, the ones that are like super spiritual, super saved. They can quote scripture and they're just, that's not me. Okay, well, a little flash here. That's not me either, okay? So don't get too caught away with that. God doesn't say that you have to do something to shine like a star. He simply says, work out your salvation. See, God already put your salvation there. You're already saved. Just work it out. Let it come out. That's it. He is working in us to will and to work for his good purpose. So work it out and let it come out. And here's the thing. If you have a newer translation, it's going to say like this: hold firm to the word of life. There in verse 16. It's going to say that, okay? The ESV, the CSB, the newer NIV, so if you have an NIV after 2011, it's going to say this. But if you have an older translation, such as the NIV from the 80s, 1983, or the King James Version, and I believe the NKJV, maybe the Berean, I'm not sure, it's going to say something like this. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? I don't know, it's not there. It's missing. Anyways, it's going to say instead of holding firm to the word of life, it's going to say holding forth the word of life. And both translations are possible, but in this case, I actually think normally you're hardly ever going to hear me side with the King James, okay? Hardly ever. But in this case, I fully believe that the King James had it right. And all the newer translations, I believe, have it wrong in this case. I think it's saying by holding forth the word of life. You're showing it because you're shining like a star. You're holding forth the word of life. It makes a lot more sense in the context, but it's easier to understand what's being said if you switch it over to holding firm to the word of life. Because, he's saying about how, you need to live. It doesn't really fit the context, but it's fine. It's fine. I'm getting off. Let's go back. When people act unchristian, then, does that mean that they aren't Christian? You've seen them before, people who you thought they were Christians, but they're not acting like Christians. So does that mean that they're not Christians because they're not acting like Christians? Well, first off, you don't really know, so don't get in too big of a hurry saying they're not a Christian. But here's the thing. Paul is writing to a church that fits that exactly. This is a church that they are not acting like Christians, okay? They are grumbling, arguing, prideful, argumentative. They're not there. But look at what he says in this. If I wrote these verses down, I don't know what's going on here. Hold on. Okay, hold on. So it was there the whole time. It was there the whole time. Golly. We're going to have to backtrack now, guys. So I had a slide for how we shine like stars, okay? Gee whiz. This is why, okay, I need to go back to school. Holding firm the word of life, that's the first way. Not by perfection, not by our image. So we already said all those things. So just pretend like I had shown that slide when I was supposed to. We have hope for our future because God promised he's working. Pretend like I said that way back when I said that. To shine, we must be different. Pretend like I said that when I said that. So now that we've all gotten that out of the way, we can get to the part about King James where it says, holding forth the word of life. There it is. I knew it was in there somewhere. We got there. We had to backtrack, but we got there. And then now we can go to the verses that I was trying to get to. So let me introduce them again. The Philippian church was one that was not acting like Christians. But evidently they were still saved. Look how Paul talks about them. Your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now, he who started a good work in you will carry it on. You can go further. As citizens of heaven, live your life worthy. That means they are already citizens of heaven. Well, let's keep going. If you have any encouragement from being united with Christ. So this is the people. He doesn't call them simply a church. He calls them saints. This is a church in conflict. This is a church that doesn't love each other. He calls them saints. He calls them those united with Christ. So be careful about this whole, if the shoe fits. Sometimes, yes, absolutely, you can tell when someone's not a Christian by how they act. Sometimes you're right. However, that doesn't mean you can always tell. Sometimes people go through rough patches. Sometimes people just are oblivious. A great example. This is a great example to get this across. Those of you who had kids, did you ever find yourself doing something stupid just because your parents had done it? And then after you'd been doing it, you stopped and thought, I think I'm going to stop doing that one. That one seems a little wrong. That ever happened to you guys? Happened to me, okay? Numerous times I'd be doing something or saying something. Like one thing that my dad always said growing up, and this isn't talk behind his back. He'll tell you the exact same thing. He said it in sermons. Is he would always say, I tell you something one time. And his point was that he's not going to follow you around, saying it over and over and over again, nagging you while you don't listen. I get that. I agree with that. But unfortunately, how it sometimes comes off to kids is you have to always pay attention all the time, because if I say anything, even if I say it quietly, you have to be constantly listening for me to say that thing. How many of you have ever learned something from one single time? You get a job, you go to your job, and your boss says, have you do this. Okay, how do I do it? Figure it out. Oh, okay. So then you try to figure it out. He's like, why are you wasting time? And then they tell you real quick how to do it, and you're like, oh, slow down, you went too fast. Well, I told you how to do it, get it done. Well, you went too fast. Kids are just the same, right? Like, you can't tell a kid one time. See, it shouldn't bother you, and hear what I'm saying. Please don't take this and twist it and run wild with it. It shouldn't bother you when you feel like you're messing up. Hear what I just said? It shouldn't bother you when you feel like you're messing up. How can you say that? It means your conscience is alive and working. It should bother you when you don't feel like you ever mess up. Everybody else is wrong. Everybody else is the problem. It's not me. I don't need to change. I don't need to. That should bother you. But when you're sitting there thinking, "Oh, I got everything figured out," it's this board. They don't know what they're doing. That's when there's problems. That's when there's problems. See, God can work in an insecure person. You don't need to have validation for God to use you. But you know what God cannot use is a prideful person. The Bible actually says that God pushes away a prideful person. So do whatever you do in light of Christ and in light of the fact that you are a witness. Whether we're talking about with your family, with your life, with your church, with your ministry, whatever it is, do it all in recognition of your witness. When you're at work next time and you're tempted to say or do something really stupid, or you're with your family and you're tempted to lash out at somebody, remember your witness. Don't forget this. And I'm going to close out with just a real simple question that I think these are one of those questions that I have for me. And so I'm writing it down and telling you so you can have it for you, because it's a really important question. What is stopping you from being blameless and pure today? What's stopping you? You might say, I'm not grumbling. I'm not arguing. Okay, all right, great. I'm glad to hear. But what is stopping you from being blameless and pure? Is it fits of anger? Is it not knowing how to think the thing without saying the thing? Is it something like lying or stealing? Is it what is the thing that's keeping you from being blameless and pure? And I'm not asking you to nitpick yourself. There's going to be something that is big. This is going to be your life struggle. That thing. Okay? So right there, you probably know what it is. Maybe it is gossip. Who knows? Maybe you just can't get along with people. Maybe you're not a people person. What is affecting your light? What is affecting your witness? What is stopping you from being blameless and pure? Maybe if you want to word it a little bit differently, what things are you doing like the world does it instead of like Christ does it? What things in your life are you doing it how the world would do it instead of how Christ would do it? It doesn't matter if we're talking about business or family or anything else, a church. It simply doesn't matter. Whatever that thing is. Please join me in prayer. We're going to close out here. As we're here as a church, we're all here together. And I think this is important. As we enter into this holy time, we're just going to seek the Lord here in just a minute. But as we enter into this holy time, I want you to try and think of one area that you are not being a light in, whether it's your family, whether it's your work, whatever. One area of your life that you're just not being a light in. I want you to keep that in your head as we go to prayer. Lord, you are holy and pure. You are perfect in all of your ways. Lord, teach us your ways. Your ways are not our ways. Teach us your ways. God, work in us. You see the struggle, you see the situation and all the drama and history with it. But God, today we're just asking one simple thing. God, help me shine. Help me shine, God. Help me shine. Let that be your prayer today. God, help me to shine. Help me to shine in my family. Help me to shine at church. Help me to shine with my job. Help me to shine with whatever I got going on. Lord, help me to shine. Help me to shine. And now with that idea in your head of whatever that situation was, that you're not shining, we're just going to pray this quick prayer together. God, help me to shine with whatever that is that you thought of. That's it. God, help me to shine. Help me to shine in my family, God. Help me to treat my wife as Christ would treat my wife. Help me to treat my grandkids as Christ would treat my grandkids. Help me to treat my boss as Christ would treat his boss. God, help me to shine. Help me to be a light. Help me to shine to my friends. Help me to shine. God, help me to shine. Lord, I pray that you would be receptive to this church. You would draw near to their prayers, God. The Bible says that God stores your prayers. He has a jar with your tears, and your prayers are gathered together. There is no heartbreak. There is no problem that God is not listening. God cares for you. God loves you. And God does care and listen when you pray. Lord, bless this church. Lord, that you would draw near and answer their prayers. That you would bless them. God, in all their ways, let them acknowledge you. Lord, in all their ways, let them shine like stars. Lord, and if there's something in us that is dimming the light, Lord, forgive us and change our heart. Because we don't want to hold up a fake Jesus. We want to hold up the real Jesus. We want to shine like stars, God. We don't want to shine like a headlight. We want to shine like stars. God bless this church. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine on you. And may the Lord be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. And in all your ways, may you trust in the Lord with all your heart. And do not lean on your own understanding. God, we praise you. Amen.